See, there's another one of the deceptions we have, and that is the idea that there should be only one definition of intelligence that should apply all across everybody. And that's going to get you in trouble the same way the concept of standard education gets you in trouble as well. The thing, though, that we are emphasizing here then is what all or most definitions of intelligence deal with, and that is goal orientation and adaptive behavior. Goal-oriented means that it is conscious and deliberate rather than accidental. So a lot of people think intelligence in its broadest sense is something that sort of happens on people, and it's something that just sort of is just automatically inherited it, and people have it or they don't have it. And I want you to note that intelligence is related to the setting of goals. Goals. And we're going to see in a minute that one of the major reasons for the confusion of black children, one of the major reasons for the kind of educational problems African children have over the world is because we as black adults are not clear about the goals that we want to accomplish as people. Because it is the goals, that we set that organizes and informs intelligence. You see, if you have no goals and no sense of purpose, then there is no organization of the intellectual capacities of your children. We're going to come back to that. You have got to have cultural goals, people. You just can't send your children to school and expect them to learn when you have no real cultural goals and directions and things you want to accomplish. The first thing they ask you is, why am I studying this mathematics? Why do I have to learn this, Mama? Why do I have to read this? And because you have no sense of where you want to go as a people, you're at a loss to telling them to. Well, it'll get you a job. Don't you want to live better than we live it? Child's out there looking at people selling crack. Well, what the hell? Why do I have to go through all of this? If this is merely what it's about, you've got to be able to inculcate the children with goals and have a goal orientation in order for them to organize their intelligence. And I'm going to show you, because you have let your future be determined by another people, your children's minds and brains have nowhere to go. And they have no reasons for learning. Period. I'm telling you. The other aspect of intelligence has to do with the adaptive. The adaptive refers to the fact that intelligence consists of the ability to solve problems. Keep that in mind. To what? To solve problems. Not to score high on the IQ test. That is not intelligence. Not to score high on the SAT. That's coincidental. But to do what? Solve problems. Solve the problems that confront you as a people, and solve the problem that confronts you as an individual. I don't care how high you score on an IQ test. If you can't solve the problems that confront you as a people and as an individual, you are dumb. And you will be destroyed. See? And I'm telling you, you've heard me say before that regardless of the level of education of black people, from the PhD level on down, there is a certain fundamental dumbness in the black community. Yes, a dumbness. You talk about the crack dealer. Though he makes his thousands per month, and maybe millions, who still doesn't know how to launder the money, still doesn't know how to legitimize the money, gets raided and the money is stacked up in the closet. Doesn't know what to do with it. Period. But he is just as stupid as the black middle classer who takes that little check and takes every ounce of that check and spends it, giving it to a white man to pay inflated rent and other kinds of stuff. Who will not save, who will not invest in the future of the children or in the future of the community. The same idiocy You know, it's characteristic of them both. So you have the same dumbness that runs from the highly educated right down to the one right in the street. You're basically no different. Yeah. I was talking to a Buppy one night, and he was complaining about the cars that the drug sellers were selling and the gold and stuff. I said, but really, brother, he is no fundamentally different from you. In a sense, you're just mad because he can buy the car you can buy. Because you're using that car to distinguish yourself in terms of class and, in terms of who you are, in terms of your status. And he's doing the same thing. So you're functionally operating on the same plane. You see, no difference. And you're just angry that he, being in one class different from yours, is able to conspicuously consume the same way you do, and now you're having a hell of a way determining how can you be distinguished from this person here. It's the same game. You're still feeding white people. You're still buying overpriced junk and garbage. You're still imperiling the future of black people. You should study history in its real aspects. Read Barbara Tuchman's history, forget what it's called, of the 14th century Europe. Read that. And I'm not one of these Africans to tell you should only read African history. You need to read European history. You must understand European history. You really cannot appropriately understand African history unless you understand European history. I'm telling you, you can't do it. Because the histories are too inextricably intertwined one with the other. You only get to know the psychology of the European by reading European history. You will know to a good extent. Understand what I'm saying? You've forgotten, haven't you? You've forgotten, huh? How many million people had to be murdered, raped, tortured, robbed, dispossessed? And you think you're dealing with nice, good people, don't you? When you read my new book, you'll see where I talk about European ethics is based on, European criminality. You robbed enough and stolen enough to be nice. That's all it is. But if we took that wealth from you, you'd be out here robbing and stealing in these streets like everybody else. You're not intrinsically nice. Don't deceive yourself. Your ethics are bought and paid for. They're not intrinsic within your own character, personality. The ultimate test of one's ethical character is when one is starving and has nowhere to go. Okay? And when one is standing in front of real temptation and you have no money in your pocket. That's when your ethics are tested. Not when you got all the money in the world and you can pretend, oh, I'm nice. Come on. We let these people run this game. And they have enough nerve. What am I saying here then? Intelligence then has to do with solving problems. Solving problems. You are not intelligent until you solve the problems that confront whom? You. Yes, you understand? You have let another people define intelligence as the ability to solve their problems. Not your own. Their problem. They then call you intelligent when you can behave and think in a way that adds to their power and maintains their position in the world. Then you're intelligent. Then you have good character. You understand? I want you to think about what I'm saying here in a minute. You see? And their measure of intelligence then is intrinsically related to those abilities and ways of thinking that allows them to solve the problems that confront them as a people. Those African Americans then, who are often called intelligent within this system, are what I will call intellectual mercenaries. They are hired guns who then are used to solve the problems of the European corporate system and economic system, political and social system, but who, when confronted with their own problems, cannot solve their own problems. They can fly European shuttles into the space. They can light European ships up on the moon. They can sit on the board, on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and direct European armies and develop military strategies for Europeans. And yet they cannot run the white man out of South Africa. And they cannot militarily free themselves. They cannot move Africa into the space race. They cannot get our people in a position where we can commercially exploit space and be a part of the expansion of this system into the universe. You are dumb and ignorant no matter what position you have in this society if you cannot solve those problems, ladies and gentlemen. So you got an MBA so that you can be smart and be productive and even better than the white boys that producing for Xerox and producing for IBM and all the rest. But you can't build and take over your own economic systems in Brooklyn and Harlem and the other places. You Africans let these Arabs and these other groups have control of your economy and control of your system. I don't care how much you can go to Cambridge and how many Rhodes Scholars you produce and so forth. If you can't solve the starvation of African people, if you cannot move Africa to a position of technological challenge to other powers, if you cannot solve the issue of securing the survival of African people, you are dumb and stupid. I don't give a damn how much you pass the exam. Therefore, you must define intelligence in terms of your own goals, in terms of your own survival. You must organize the thinking of children and the behavior of your children in terms of your own survival, not in terms of supporting the survival of another people. When you organize the intelligence of these children in terms of the interests of another people, you are making your children traitors to your own causes. Colin Powell will direct armed assaults on African nations and African peoples. And I bet you couldn't get him to organize an army in Africa against the colonial and other forces in Africa. Understand what I'm saying? You have to look at intelligence. You can't accept this standard definition of intelligence. Screw the white folks' definition of intelligence. You must look at it in terms of what do we need to survive? What do we need to be liberated? What do we need as a people to secure our survival? So in this sense, the intelligence involves the constant active interaction between so-called inherited ability and environmental experience. Really, we're going to see intelligence and environment is essentially one and the same thing. We talk about them for convenience as if they're different things, but they are really one and the same thing. Intelligence and behavior and so forth only can make sense within the context of an environment. Otherwise, they have no meaning at all, no value whatsoever. Yeah, no value at all. You can't separate intelligence from environment. Yeah, or goal orientation or problem solving. It has no meaning. It only has meaning within a particular context and reflects that context. You can't have criminality where boys kill each other over sneakers in a society that doesn't sell sneakers, can you? No. So in a sense, almost every crime is a social act. Almost every behavior is a social act, you see, defined by a social environment and a social system in which that act takes place. And so is the case with intelligence. In a sense, you cannot be the same as white folk unless you what? White folk. No matter how you try it. No matter how you play it. No matter how you do it. You exist in a context that is unique to you. You are confronted with problems that are unique to you. You have goals that are unique to you. You live under conditions that are unique to you. You have a history that is unique to you. And you cannot be a white person. And a white person cannot be you. And when you then try to get to be a white person, you are merely going to drive yourself crazy and be inappropriate for yourself and not going to be able to solve your problems. It's not going to happen. I often tell people when you take a course in college, the course is not only defined by its subject matter, you see, and this is the problem often you have with like students in certain classes. They look at the book and they think that what's in the book is what the course is. You know, and I've told you about this situation where often when you're talking about subject matter that's not in the book and the students are looking in the book to see if what you're talking about is there, and they decide if it's not there, then you must be off the subject. You know, or you must not be talking psychology, you must be talking something else, because they don't see the guy who wrote the book called Introduction to Psychology talking about this. And then you run to the dean, we're being miseducated, he's not teaching us what's in the book. You know? As if, you know, psychology is defined by the author. That's the reason why I'm saying even in totally black classes, the white man is still sitting there with that book. You know, and directing the course, directing people's mind. You can see, as I've said before, people's mind turn off, you know, as soon as they don't see it in the book. So their mind just shut down. You can look at their eyes, you know, just shut down. They don't hear you anymore. And then when you get back to the book, they wake up, you know, they get back into it because they figure that's going to be on the test. But you try to tell them, you know, look, when I'm off the book, I'm talking about the most important things around. You see. What are we saying here then? That a course is not only defined by its so-called subject matter or its subject, but a course is defined by its problems. You see, by the problems a particular people have to solve. So white psychology books, white sociology books, white books on economics and education and so forth are in part determined to a significant degree by the problems that whites face in these particular areas. You see? And when you take an issues course, it would be an issues course that determines their problems, not yours. That is why, despite the fact that you come out with a head full of knowledge and information, you are still unable to apply that information to your own circumstances. Understand? The economic problems of white folk are not the economic problems of black folk. You see, you got very different economic organizations of the black community. You have very different issues to deal with. How do you get black folk to spend money with black folk? How do you organize the money that black people have such that that money can be used to produce commercial and business growth and development? What is the psychology that makes black folk feel good when they give all that money to white folk? How can you as a retailer get around that kind of psychology if you were a business person? Those are black issues and black problems, you know. How can we get control of the importation of all African products? You see, how do we get control of the distribution of African products within the United States economic system? How do we take over the United States economic system? Those are black problems. Those are black economic problems. How, given the fact that by mid-next century, white people will be a minority in the United States, over 50% of the jobs in this country will be held by minorities. You see, how do we take advantage of that situation and change this economic system around and make it an African one? And then connect it and organize it in its relationship to African countries. Those are the dissertations you should be writing. Those are the master's theses you should be getting into. Those are the kind of issues you should be doing in your business courses and so forth. If you are not doing those, you are not doing Afrocentric business. You understand? Let's understand that. You can only solve problems based on the information available in your head by using that information, contrasting, comparing, approaching it hypothetically, and so forth, to arrive at possible answers and approaches to problems. How do you solve an African problem without African information in your head? You got a problem, haven't you? Even if you're able to think well abstractly, Even if you're able to think well conceptually, ladies and gentlemen, even if you're able to do mathematics very, very well, you're still going to have a problem because you don't have the fundamental operation. You don't have the fundamental what? Information that is necessary to the solution of a problem. You see, so the mere training in thinking, or the mere training in abstract reasoning and so forth, while good, is not good enough. Knowledge is not good enough. It's not enough. You got to have more than knowledge. You got to have other things. You got to have uses for that knowledge. And knowledge is organized by goals, by intentions, by plans. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. It's why it's so important for you to have a sense of nation as a people. Because if you don't have a sense of nation, you can have a fund of knowledge, but still perish. African people have a tremendous amount of knowledge and skills. It's unbelievable. If we were a nation with the kind of knowledge we have, the skills we have, we would be one of the major nations on this earth. You see? But because there is no overarching national goal, no national program, no national administration among black people, that knowledge just sits in isolated bits and pieces, and it's uncoordinated and cannot be used to solve the people's problems or secure their survival. It's the same situation where black people sit with billions of dollars in their pockets and have no economic system. Because an economic system is not the same thing as money. The emphasis is on system. It is on the fact that people must have a particular set of relationships with each other and a particular way of allocating and distributing money and distributing their talents and skills and so forth that makes an economic system. Economic systems existed prior to money. The ultimate economic system depends upon social organization and depends upon the nature of a relationship between people, not the mere existence of money. And therefore, here we are as a people with billions of dollars and no economic and social and political influence in America to count for. It's a shame. Why? Is it because you didn't have Andrew Bremer up on the board or whatever, the federal board, that you don't have PhDs in economics? Hey, educated the wrong way. Intelligence only organized to solve what? Other people's problems, not their own problems.